the first passage we have this evening is from one of my favorite books growing up, which is The Last Crusader. We've talked about Louis de Wohl on this podcast a little bit before.
He writes some of the best Catholic fiction,
Yeah.
like historical fiction, novels about saints. I believe The Golden Thread is one of his that's about St. Ignatius of Loyola. That one is quite good.
Yes, the Golden Thread is his, pretty sure. His magnum opus is The Spear, which is one of the books that's behind me on my desk here. Yep. That's a good book. But the first one I got given was The Last Crusader, which is the only one that he didn't do on a saint, a canonized saint, because he did it on Don Juan de Austria, who was an excellent man in his own right.
Yeah, very likely to be a saint, but formal canonization is a matter for higher authorities than us.
Yes. And ultimately unnecessary, because we're going to party with him in heaven, God willing, one day anyway. So, and that's all I think he's caring about. But in the midst of this story of Don Juan of Austria, there comes a point in the story where Don Juan's gone through a lot of things, and a lot of different personal things in life, and he has questions about what was God trying to do here, and so he essentially goes on retreat in this one monastery, and some chapters in the middle of the book are taken up with him talking with this one friar, Friar Juan de Calhora. And there's a lot of great insights in there. There's a lot of great passages in there that would have been worthy of picking and discussing for this evening. But the one that we've settled on is as follows. This is the friar talking. Since that German fellow invented a new way of writing with that printing machine of his, we are in for a different kind of trouble as well. What is it they are going to print on those sheets which generate so quickly you can cover cities and towns with manifestos and pamphlets? Princes and teachers are going to make use of it to spread their commands and their knowledge. What commands and what knowledge? The power of the layman increases and will go on increasing. That by itself is all to the good. It will make for more modesty and humility among the ecclesiastics, and it will increase the layman's responsibility. But now all depends on what UC makes of it. Whether he will use his new power for his own aggrandizement, or in the service of our Lord. He rose and put more logs on the fire. Don't think that's a new thought, he said. Christ himself had it before, as usual. Didn't he speak of the scarcity of labors in the vineyard? And he sent out his apostles not to teach a few select people only, but all the nations. Laymen, laymen. Here's a new crusade. Deus lo vult. There's some important lessons in there that are good to remind ourselves of. And predominantly I would just highlight that, we do have a lot of responsibility as people, and more so even beyond what the people of this time would have had. And granted, you actually had thoughts on this that you articulated better than I did when we were prepping for this, so I'm going to let you speak and give your version of that.
I did. So the first concern is the gatekeeping of knowledge. Where, you're not one of us, so you can't have this knowledge. And we're the only ones who know how to read, and we're the only ones who produce this, because before this, everything was handwritten. It was really expensive, really time-consuming. Sometimes it took a single monk his entire life to hand copy down the Bible.
Yes, we don't chain up books because we're trying to withhold knowledge. It's because we're trying to keep knowledge.
Yes, it's because we're trying to keep people from stealing the very, very beautiful pages that are gilded and illuminated. And they made them beautiful because that's worth doing. Well, why didn't they just write it? Well, you could, but anything worth doing is worth overdoing. So you make it beautiful. Make it visually beautiful and appealing, especially to if it is opened around those who can't read it, then they know what it is. They can actually see, there's something, this is just beautiful. They can appreciate it without having to be able to read it. But, so the opposing vice to that, we'll say, is what this monk is afraid of with the dawn of the printing press, is that, well, since knowledge can just be disseminated so quickly, any idea can just be spread. You can print off 1,000 copies of the same sheet of paper and 1,000 copies of the same heresies, and spread it throughout your entire city. And before too long, if you have worded it the right way, it has had the desired effect. And it has taken the hearts and minds of everyone who read it. And
Exactly.
that's kind of how the internet is, because the internet is the greatest mass communication technology since the printing press. And now it is loaded full of people who have no idea what they're talking about, and in some cases are outright lying, but have scores of followers who hang on every word and believe everything they say, without question. So it's bad enough when, if you have a printing press, you can disseminate your ideas throughout the city in an afternoon. Now your idea can be spread to the entire world in an instant, which is magnitudes more dangerous.
It is.
So every half-baked conspiracy theory, every stupid bit of phony philosophy can reach the entire world instantly. And if you say something, you can get anybody to believe anything if you say it with enough confidence. If you sound earnest enough, people who don't know better will believe you. And so people will just see, some bit of AI-generated slop that says something completely untrue. And then they'll just believe it because it was on the internet. And, well, this sounds right. This sounds like it's being taught by somebody who knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And that is really, I think, what he's getting down to. It's the not being able to think for yourself and not being able to discern and actually think through yourself what is being said of, well, does this actually make a lot of sense? Do these dots actually connect? Or do you have to twist the page to make it look like they do? Plato had a similar concern. He says that it was Socrates' concern, where Socrates has this concern about the invention of writing and books in general, that people will stop thinking, that the dawn of writing and reading will be the end of thinking, because then those that write will be the only ones who think, and they will do all of the thinking for those that read.
It's really funny to think about that these days, isn't it?
Yeah, how Socrates was cautious of reading. And to an extent, he's right. Thinking and reasoning should come just before reading. Like, how often do we hear somebody go, "Man, you're stupid. Why don't you go read a book and get smarter?" Well, what book?
Yeah, it might work, but with some caveats.
Yeah, reading a book doesn't make you smart. And proper thinking and use of reason is a learned skill. That is not something that you just happen to do. That's not something you just figure out on your own. That's something most people have to be taught, because most people aren't Socrates or Confucius. And even then, I think Confucius actually had a master too. And it's unclear whether or not Socrates actually had one.
Learn from somewhere. These things are passed on,
But just learn to think first. Now, it isn't that people should be taught how to think instead of what to think, because you do need to be taught both. Children should be taught what to think as well as how to think. Because you can teach children, you can teach somebody the method of reason, and he can still come to bad conclusions if he starts from a bad place, even if he's using reason correctly. So he does have to be taught. You do have to teach people what to think to an extent, but there's a balance.
Mm-hmm.
What to think, how to think, and I think how to think should come first. And for the most part, that is something that if you let them, children will develop on their own. But that also has to be guided by those of us who are older and wiser.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my sense of things is that they're going to pick up on a lot of what you do. If you haven't taught them to think, you still will have taught them to think.
Yeah. Because if they see in the way that you talk and the way that you act the use of reason, if they see you coming to conclusions, then they'll figure out how to do that in the same way.
Exactly.
Now, I'm not going to say that you shouldn't teach your children how to read, because, yes, reading is a good, despite what Socrates was afraid of. And yes, the printing press is a fantastic invention, especially because the first thing that was ever printed on it was the Bible.
Yes.
But with every new technology, it has to be approached with caution, and we must learn how to use it correctly instead of just, pedal to the floor and with reckless abandon. It should take time before we figure out what the right means of using it is and the morality of using it. Because I also wonder how long it was after the printing press before pornography became more common.
Oh, someone figured that out.
I don't think it took more than a couple of decades, probably, before pornographic literature started becoming mass-produced.
Yeah, you're putting a lot of power in the hands of the people, which we lay out as a good thing. Just like we lay out that books are a good thing. Just like we lay out that if we had to really get down to it, I feel like you'd have to argue that social media is still a fundamentally good thing.
It is at its core. It is, at least in theory, a good thing.
Yeah. The internet is that. AI is that. So great. But we still have concerns, and we ought to have concerns, and we ought to want safeguards, and we ought to want to use this thing correctend, right? So what does that boil down to? Well, it's not down to the AI, it's down to the morals of the people that use it. So let's tend to those morals. What do you actually care most about in life? Do you care about serving the Lord or your own aggrandizement, as he says? Do you care more about doing what's right? Or do you care more about, doing what's convenient? Doing what you see everybody else doing? Like, oh, we gained with the internet the ability to just kind of steal whatever we wanted and break as much copyright as humanly possible. Yeah, that's still stealing.
Yeah, it's still wrong.
Yeah. We gained the ability to post that angry comment to the entire world, like you were saying.
And still
you shouldn't.
And still have the anonymity of not having to go out and yell it in the street.
Yeah.
Because you can do it from the comfort of your own home.
Yeah, that's still wrong.
And as sort of an aside and a link to that, this is connected with we have the power to say whatever we want without consequence, unless you live in England. And you're that poor Jewish guy that got arrested for anti-Semitism because you made a comment about your rabbi, which actually did happen. But anyway, at least mostly in practice, you're able to say whatever you want without consequence. That should not be. Like, your words actually do have consequences. But more than that, there are other reasons why you should guard how you speak on the internet. It's hard for people to see this because, usually, when you're on social media, it's just you and your phone in your own little world. And when you're focused totally internally, focused totally on yourself and your own little world, you think that you can do whatever you please.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't like it, then you don't have to watch it. Well, yeah, that is true to an extent. But there was, at one time, with television, even before there were rules, when television was run by those who understood how to put a performance on a stage. Because a good performance is in good taste. Doesn't offend anybody, and I mean offend in the genuine sense. It isn't vulgar. It isn't vile. It isn't crass. They don't do that because, there's control of language and there's no free speech and blah, blah, blah. No, the performer does that out of respect for his audience because he is in their presence. And in the early days of television performances understood that, these televisions are in people's homes. So in our performance being shown on this television, we are being let into somebody else's home. We are a guest. So we should behave accordingly, and we should behave with respect. And Red Skelton ended the very first episode of his television program with, "I thank you for honoring me by letting me into your home, and I promise that I will not say or do anything to offend or insult you, because I have children too." So how many people are there on social media who just have the attitude of, if you don't like it, you don't have to watch it, so they just say whatever the hell they please? without the thought that, oh, wait a minute, if somebody has decided to watch me, to view my production, my content, then I am being virtually allowed as a guest into their lives. So I should behave accordingly. That should not stop me from speaking the truth. I would certainly speak the truth in somebody else's home, even if it got me kicked out. But I'm not just going to say whatever I want, however I want, and I don't care who I offend. Then you have no respect for anybody but yourself. Again, this is all about you and your own self-aggrandizement and your feeling big and important.